I guess it's only fair that the youngest goes first. I feel like I'm playing Monopoly or something. So yes, I am an art student. You're all taking this very well. I'm an art student. And all that really means is that if you were to look in my garage right now, there's this kind of stupid, huge, avalanche-prone stack of paintings and drawings from community college leaned up against one of the walls, and they sort of languish there in the heat and trip everyone who walks by. I'm also a songwriter, and songs are so much easier to store, and mine are on CDs in a suitcase crammed beneath my bed next to the rustling carcasses of other paintings and drawings that I think are from high school. None of it gets out much. I have been young my whole life, and it's been very, very nice, but also a truly awkward state to work and create from, because it's not at all lost on me that the things I make today are likely to be the worst and most immature of my entire life to come. And a few years ago, I was thinking about this. And I somehow decided that I would not have these types of problems if I were more like a moth. Yeah. Now, I don't know if y'all think about moths with any sort of regularity, but for some reason I do. And I think moths are super because, unlike us, they go through 4 very distinct stages of development: egg, larva, pupa, and adult. Now, the pupal stage, which sounds the most disgusting because it is when the moth hunkers down and surrounds itself in a protective cocoon, and it basically digests itself, and its physiology is rearranged, and no one even has to deal with it until it emerges completely ready for adulthood. And I thought about that, and I was like, I want that. It's true. There have been times when it seemed like it would be so nice if I could somehow zip-lock myself up into a cocoon and hang upside down for however long it took for me to reach fully functioning artistic maturity. And it's been something I have been meaning to try for years, but I have pretty consistently been a mammal, and for some reason I just can't see. No. I'm pretty sure that moths do not have people problems. But it seems as if I have a definite moth problem. But the more that I think about it, the more that I realize that I'm probably not the only one. I know this may sound silly at first, but I think we do tend to subscribe to unhealthy, rather insectine models of development more than we might realize. The idea that youth is something completely separate from adulthood, a crucial stepping stone, but worthless in itself. And I think that by withdrawing into these cocoons of age or of skill level, we isolate ourselves from our present selves and our present surroundings. So that's what I'd like to talk about today: how we can foster connection within ourselves and our communities by surrendering our pupa complex. I'm glad we can laugh about this. Now, I have to warn you, I'm going to talk about being young. Perhaps you have already familiarized yourselves with the emergency exits located in the rear. It's actually a very foolish thing to talk about, because most young people know that being young is not the greatest thing to try to talk about if you want to be taken seriously for any meaningful amount of time. And it's probably because no one ever understands, or everyone always understands perfectly. In fact, most people will experience youth at least once. And it's funny, because when we're not busy nostalgically romanticizing it, we tend to treat it like a barely survivable infectious disease. So why bother getting comfortable with it, or even happy if you're just going to get over it at some point eventually, hopefully, anyway, hopefully, probably, hey, welcome to Earth, don't sit down. As a young artist, I feel like I've spent a whole lot of time not sitting down. But eventually, things somehow got to the point where I felt like I had to pretend like I had to be so apologetic about everything I made all the time, I guess out of respect for actual artists who had been through it. And I know this is horrible, but there have been times at my own shows where I have my own CD in my hand that some genuinely kind person wants to buy, and I actually have to stop myself from saying, "Are you sure that you want this? Because I'm probably going to make a better one." And it's true because I am. Now, I realize that this might just be my sort of existential reluctance to accept the fact that everything I've made up to this point has either been practice or worthless, but I know that there is something definitely wrong with the idea that the only way for me to feel okay about what I do now is to recognize the fact that eventually I'll feel better about what I do later, hopefully. That is messed up. So, I stand before you today with a full-blown pupa complex, a 112-degree garage packed with withering paintings, and a musty old suitcase full of young songs. Frankly, I don't get out much, and I'd kind of like to get over it while I'm still young. The getting over it, I think, is done through community. Connection unravels cocoons. It makes them unnecessary, and we all know that communities can mutually benefit from this if they use connection as an opportunity to engage youth in a really constructive way. So what's stopping us? It kind of seems like communities might suffer from the exact same pupa complex as individuals do. We divvy ourselves up by generation in the same way that individuals might isolate themselves out by age. We all kind of know how it is. So we wrap our young people up into generations and give the generations edgy names and Time magazine features and then kind of sit back and let them have at it. I think I'm like Generation Y or me or Why me or something like that. And I'm actually not complaining. I think it's just perfect. But the question is, why do we do this? Why are we so bent on compartmentalizing ourselves, especially our youth? I think it has something to do with our conditions of worth that we hold as a society. We're so focused on product and productivity, and we know that young people can't and don't compete on the same level of the job market as older, more educated, more experienced adults. That's clear. There's a really interesting debate happening right now surrounding education. And a lot of people are very concerned that we have this system that's sort of assembly line-ish. And it does seem that way. It's sort of insulated and off to the side here, and it's where our young people go to learn and grow and do swim team until they figure out how to make themselves useful to us. And then they sort of hop off the conveyor belt, hopefully into a job. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't exceptional schools and that there aren't students who get out there and work or play or volunteer or otherwise connect with their communities, because there are. What I'm saying is, we don't make this easy. All of that stuff has to be accomplished like on top of scholastic responsibilities or at the expense of them. And speaking from my limited personal experience, some of the most active and engaged students that I met in my time in high school were also some of the most sleep-deprived. It's true. But frankly, we don't have time to worry about that. We are looking ahead. We are moving on. We think of young people as units of future, not present potential. We know they're going to grow up anyway. And so we ask ourselves the questions like, okay, what will these kids bring to society when they've grown? Or how can we turn them into the leaders we'll need? Or, how can we start them out on our brand of cigarettes? Like, if hypothetically that's what we were going to try to do. That's the pupa complex talking. We effectively isolate youth by swaddling it in our cocoony institutions and waiting for it to grow its wings. It's funny, because the ways in which we currently prepare for what our communities will need in the future often tend to cut us off from the very things our communities do need in the present, one of those being connection across all ages. I grew up here. Can you tell by my boots? I grew up here in Redding, California. I just checked it out on Google Maps. I literally grew up 2.3 miles from right here. Like I said, Redding, California, a relatively small town. And it's been a youth largely spent exploring various wetlands and mountains and old barns and abandoned mines and a whole myriad of other ways to flirt with tetanus. Redding isn't exactly your typical cultural or artistic mecca. I mean, we don't tend to collect art like we do speeding tickets, just for instance, among other things. And if I had to explain this part of the world to another part of the world, I'd be like, we're North Cal, but we're NorCal. We're like Meta NorCal. We're like hella Meta NorCal. Anyway, what was I going to say? Oh, I was going to tell you that I got my first paying gig at the age of 15, right here. And I can still see the calendar I had at the time. The date was a weekend, and it was kind of off to the side. And it was this veritable oasis of black Sharpie where I had circled it 117 times. I was so excited. And at the time, I thought it was because the world loved me, 2 hours and $50. But now I see that it was something much, much more than that. Art and music, the arts, have been worth most to me because they've made me worth most to this community. They've dragged me out of my cocoon and connected me to something bigger, and I have been kicking and screaming and so grateful. You wouldn't think that the arts would have much impact here, but they actually have an incredible amount of impact here, especially. And I think that they are so powerful because the arts require us to do two of the most important things in the world, and that is to look and listen. As a young person, I can tell you that those are what matters most. And if we look at ourselves systemically, if we look at youth as a demographic, we realize that youth is something we never graduate from. It's a part of us. It's the part of us that suffers from chronic youth. You know, it's constantly being refreshed, but there will always be young people. You know, if you feed them, they'll just keep coming back. And since it's a demographic that we are stuck with, it's up to us to decide what we make of it. And I think that we won't get far if we aren't at least willing to look and listen. Now, at this time, I would like to share with you a charming parable of the modern supermarket that I'm sure we all have some familiarity with. It goes sort of like this. Okay, so a mother or father stands with several heads of cabbage and both hands busy with a twist tie and a growing plastic strand of grocery bags that won't come apart, while their kid's trying to find where the sound barrier starts on a four-wheel, two-legged race car charge of an old shopping cart that only turns left on a good day, headed straight from the lettuce to the artichoke display. And for some reason, nothing goes wrong for 2 to 3 whole minutes, and everyone's kind of in denial and everything's sweet until crash! Shopping cart and fruit stand meet. And that is what gets everyone's attention. Youth comes in all ages, all sizes, all types, all forms. And the true danger of the pupa complex has nothing to do with GDP or the fact that maybe we're missing out on opportunities to harvest creative capital in the form of drawings or paintings or CDs or whatever. It's nothing so tangible. The true danger of the pupa complex lies in the fact that we have quite possibly become a society that doesn't pay attention to itself. until we hear the crash. Speaking as a young person, I know I won't have the opportunity to do this much longer. So there is something I would like you all to know as a young person. Your attention is precious. It's also finite. Think of the advertisements that want it. Think of the people that need it. We all have to understand the power of our attention and honor it and honor ourselves by deciding carefully where to place it and bestowing it generously when we can. Our attention is our truest, most present potential to help depupify the world. You can put that on a t-shirt. It just sounds filthy. So I leave you with this. No matter what's going on in our system, no matter if it's functional or dysfunctional, our first responsibility is always to pay attention. That's all we have to do. We just have to go around and remind each other that we're not moths. And we have to just try to connect and be there and listen and look and receive impromptu harmonica recitals and shoe sole poems and one-chord wonders and make sure we only cringe when we're sure no one can see us. These things matter. We all have a part to play and work to do. And the present has only the potential we give it through our attention, no matter how old we are or what it involves. Even if it involves, as in my case, making the worst art of a lifetime. Congratulations to the class of 2000 Infinity. Do your worst. Thank you.